So I stayed engulfed in the gay world. Got a job at a flower shop, go figure, and became very successful at becoming a floral designer. I know it sounds kind of stereotypical, but it is what it is. Then I got another job and at a department store working with interior design and doing florals again. And there were some Christians who worked at this department store, and their names are Heather and Jimmy, and they were very, very, very cool with me. They knew about me because, like I said, I was completely out and everything. They knew I was obsessed with rock stars. They knew I was obsessed with rock music, and they kept talking to me about the Lord, about Jesus, and being raised Catholic, and I had an idea of Jesus and God, but I didn't understand the gospel, let's say, the true nature of God, or I hadn't had a personal encounter with him. And that's what they kept talking about, and it interested me. So we became very good friends, and they kept asking me to come to church with them, which, of course, I wouldn't do. And then there was an event coming at this one church, and it was called a Rock Revival. And it was a minister, and he was speaking about rock and roll music and the church's stance and views on a lot of it. And so I knew it was going to be negative. And rock stars and rock and roll was the only thing that mattered to me in my life at this point, that and the homosexuality. So I committed to going for the next 3 nights to this revival, so to speak. And I went the very first night with my arms folded. I wasn't going to have anything to do with anything they had to say. And the minister who was preaching that night was speaking about, a lot of the messages, the negative messages in rock music. And, he was on touchy ground now. He was talking about my gods, my heroes. And I didn't like anyone saying anything bad about them. And I sat there with my arms folded the whole night, went back the second night. For some reason, I kept continuing to go. And I noticed that people would go out of their way to greet me and to be kind to me. And, I'm in a leather fringed jacket. And my hair's bleached blonde now, and it's like down to here. And they could tell I was a total, rocker. And the third night, I remember he was talking about, some of the blatant messages in some of the music, like from AC/DC, Highway to Hell, and some of the Black Sabbath stuff. And it was weird. It was like all of a sudden I started to shake a little bit and get uncomfortable and fidgety. And it was as if a fog started to lift. Like scales had been removed from my eyes. I could hear the truth. All of it was supernatural, basically. I could just hear that what this man was saying was true, and the message that he was giving and the hope that he was offering in Jesus Christ was real. And I started to cry, and I couldn't stop crying, and I couldn't stop shaking, and I didn't understand what was going on. And people started to pray for me. And I remember him asking that if you wanted to know Jesus Christ, and that if you wanted to accept him into your life and to make you a new creature, that you could come forward. And I ran to my car, and I got at this time in the 80s, we had tape players in our car, and I had a tape case full of probably 200 cassettes of all my favorite rock and roll bands. And I just ran to the car, and I grabbed this box of cassettes, and I ran back in the church, and I could see people who had been kind to me this whole 3 nights were waiting for me. And I ran in there, and I took that box of music, and I threw it up on the altar. And I fell down on my knees and prayed the sinner's prayer and asked the Lord to come into my life. And I don't mean to get all crazy supernaturally on you, but I know that when I prayed, I said I saw the Lord on the top of a hill, and he was just looking at me and smiling, and his arms are outstretched, and he was calling my name. And I ran up that hill into his arms at night, and the pastor turned around and saw the box of music, and started, shouting for joy, basically, as did the whole church. And many people came to me that night and prayed for me. And it's an experience that I'll never forget. It was December 4th, 1984 at 9:40 p.m. And it was the beginning of a whole new life that was starting to change for me. I decided to leave my lifestyle, leave my friends, and start to seek the Lord. Of course, my Catholic parents didn't understand this concept whatsoever. And I started to do things with a new way. I felt different. When I got up the next morning, the colors were brighter. It was like a weight was off my shoulders. I was happy. I was at work and I was telling everybody about Jesus and what had happened, and that it was like I got it. That connection got made in my head. I understood what Jesus did, and that my only way to live eternally with him was to accept him and accept what it was he did for me. And I got that, and I couldn't help but contain it. I had to tell everyone. And I decided what better thing for me to do than to start a rock and roll band, but a Christian rock and roll band. So through a matter of a magazine and putting an ad in a magazine, I met a guy named Bill who was a guitar player. And me and him went to a concert, and we met these two other guys named Mark and Rich, and the four of us together were a singer, a drummer, a guitar player, and a bass player, and we formed a band called Archangel. I moved away from my parents and from my friends and moved about 40 miles away into another city, where I moved in with the guys in the band. Started attending a wonderful church in this city, and the band started to practice and rehearse, and we got good, and we started booking shows, and we were writing songs, and we recorded a demo tape. We were getting pretty well known. We were being blessed financially with a financial backer. We had our own tour bus. We were all living together. And then at one point we kind of separated, and I moved in with the bass player and his family, and was attending church, and everything was going good, and God was blessing us, and life was great. And it had been about a year now that I'd been walking with the Lord, and things started to change. Some of the old memories and desires started to creep back in. You got to remember, I'd never had any kind of a relationship of men of any kind before, other than inappropriate, sinful kind. And the band started to have some problems, and I became very emotionally attached to one of the members in the band. It wasn't a good thing at all. In fact, I fell in love with this person. I never in a million years wanted this to happen, but it happened. And I became very obsessive about where they were and who they were with and why didn't I go. And it started to cause division in the band. And I was seeing the pastor of my church as a counselor who was helping me with some of these very things. And in the middle of all this going on, the pastor one day took me out in his car for a drive, and while we were out talking, he made a sexual pass at me, made a suggestion that he would like to be more intimate with me. Well, this totally sent the walls crashing down around me, and everything that I had found to be real and true about God was starting to fall apart again. I was in love with someone who was my best friend. The band was falling apart. My pastor made a sexual pass at me. It just imploded. The band broke up, and I moved back home to my wonderful mother and father.